start off with my colleague in the Senate. He's Senate President from the island of Tinian and Agigan, Senate President Carl Neighbors. We have floor leader from Precinct 3, Representative Marissa Flores. We have our floor leader, Senator Donald Manglonia from Rhoda, right here. He's just sitting down. From Precinct 4, our chairman of the Judicial and Governmental Operations, Representative Joel Camacho. And our PUTC counterpart in the Senate, Senator Manny Castro. I almost said Manny Tenorio, but Manny Tenorio Castro, yeah. So welcome everyone. The format that I think really works for us is Q&A, so is that okay? You guys have questions? You guys want to attack us too? I mean, with your comments, nothing physical, but even if you guys get physical, we understand the frustration. We deal with it too. I'm just kidding. So, you guys want to open up for questions? Or you want to learn a little bit of some of the issues we're dealing with? Okay, I guess we'll go with the issues. Yeah. Well, I guess we can. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Please press your the mic. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, good morning, sir. I've been here for a long time, so I'm just curious for this question because I'm more familiar for other government like Attorney's General Office, and other or court, BMB. So my question, sir, is what are the main responsibilities of Legislative Bureau of the CNMI government?
Okay, when you say Legislative Bureau, just to be clear, the Legislative Bureau, they're the support staff of the legislature.
Okay.
But is your question about as members of the legislature or the Legislative Bureau?
The member.
Oh, the members, okay. I mean, basic civics, right? We have 3 branches of government. I'm sure you guys know the basic roles of each branch, right? So the executive, they execute the law. The legislative, they make the laws. And then the judicial branch, they clarify, right? They interpret the law, so to say, right? Yeah. So on a basic level in the legislature, our responsibility is to look into policy that needs to be changed. And when we talk about policy and legislation, it's everything. If we're going to move $10, we need to go through legislation. Maybe $10 is too low, but you get the idea. Of course, the additional things we do is things like this. Our office is the community, okay? The entire CNMI. Even if the Senate President is from Tinian, Saipan included, it's also his office, right? So there are things that we do outside in the community. I'm sure you see it. I'm sure you're from different precincts. You'll see office staff from the different representatives cleaning the villages or visiting constituents and other things. So to keep it simple, that's our responsibility. And colleagues, yes, Senate President, go ahead.
If I could add on to that, also when there's land leases, for example, with public lands, the committees usually have joint committee sessions to expedite the process where they review documents, bank accounts, bank statements from potential investors. They'll go to the different areas where the development might possibly be to speak to the local community and see and understand how they feel about the proposed requests. Also, lastly, we also deal with resolutions. So whenever there's something that impacts us that's out of our control, for example, with the federal government, we'll make resolutions, whether House joint resolutions, House resolutions, Senate resolutions. These are all ways that we can voice our opinion for the record, that they could have a document to refer to that says the CNMI legislature believes A, B, and C as it pertains to subject 1, for example. We also do the budget every year. This budget has been a kind of an ongoing budget. It's a unique budget, really. At the end of September is normally when the budget process is completed, and we don't revisit it until some monies are identified or we haven't met the marks from quarter one or quarter two. And at that point, the executive branch will notify the governor, will be notified, the governor will be notified by Department of Finance that say we're expecting $40 million in quarter one, and we only realized $15 million. So obviously our budget is off significantly. And at that point, we need to reconvene as a legislature and discuss how we're going to make up the difference, and so we can move forward, not having an unbalanced budget and having obligated money that doesn't exist. So those are just some of the components that issues that the legislature deals with on a regular basis.
Thank you. And colleagues, of course, if you would like to add, just go ahead and raise your hand. And does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. That's very informative.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Here you go, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hello and good morning. My question is, what are some of the most recent, or what are the most important laws passed in the recent years?
Well, Senate President did mention the budget, and that was just a few months ago. And the reason why I would say that that's important is because we avoided a shutdown, or partial shutdown, if I may say. But that one is important because the last thing we want to do is, cut services out to the public. So I would say in very recent times, it's the budget. We are working on different bills or laws. Currently, like the Senate President said, right now there's a revised budget we're working on. Projection was this, but the real story is less, right? So now we're working on that to pass a more realistic budget. I'm sure you guys are aware of the federal shutdown too, right? And one of the biggest issues we were facing, we saw that memo that came out, I think mid-October, about the NAP program, the food stamps, right? That they're not going to happen for November. Fortunately, it is going to happen. Maybe not completely, but on our end, we want to try our best to take care of the shortfall. MPLT was able to remit $1 million, and the House recently just passed that. It's in the Senate's court now. So yeah, those are at least in very recent times, those are the two, I would say, and the revised budget that we're all working on, and the MPLT loan issue that we're trying to work on too. I would say those are the important issues currently and in recent times, because we need to take care of the services out to the public. And before I move forward, I'd like to recognize Representative Roman Beneventi from Precinct 1. He's the chair of the House Committee on Education. And that was his entrance music, by the way.
If I could,
Colleagues, Senate President.
yes, one of the bills that was actually authored by Floor Leader Marissa Flores, but it had been worked on for about 3 years in concert with the coalition and also the chief prosecutor for the Attorney General's office regarding sexual abuse of a minor. During the course, since I've been in the legislature, we've been trying to meet and trying to restructure the language. That particular bill that she was able to get passed, again in concert with all of the stakeholders, needed to redefine some of the language because it was antiquated. It also didn't have any language regarding voyeurism, so like recordings, because cell phones weren't really thought about at the time that the original statute was made. So nobody thought somebody wasn't recording you with a phone. Revenge porn, for example, that's part of the legislation, and all of these things were comprehensive. We needed to take a wholesale approach at redefining what that meant and to ensure the safety of all of our minors in the CNMI. So I thought that was a very important bill that we were able to pass.
Yeah, that is, yeah. And that took a while too. And that bill, So yeah, it took a while, but uh, like the Senate President said, when it comes to putting legislation together, it's really nice to have all the stakeholders come together and share their input on the issues. How we come up with legislation too. Sometimes there are things we had in our mind for a while, and then it's also things like this. Some of the questions you ask, some of the recommendations you might make. That's a plus for us because we will take this back and huddle up and maybe address those concerns as you guys bring it up today. Okay, colleagues, you want to add? Anybody want to add? What are some of the? Okay, Senator Castro.
So I just want to commend Rep. Marissa and members of the Senate because that, in regards to sexual abuse and exploitation of minors, there's been a lot of cases, incidents, most especially in the public school system. And for years, it's just been swept under the rug or even internally, and it's very sad to know these things that are criminal, that they didn't face the due process that they needed to. But given this monumental legislation that was just passed a few months ago, we can keep those accountable. So it's very clear. If Rep. Marissa, what was the bill number? Do you happen to remember?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It was so
Anyways,
many months ago. 2401? Wow, okay, yeah, it's a public law, 2401, jeez, okay.
so if you look into that bill, see, we're more focused on the content rather than the number, the subject. And there's so many bills, but if you have time, take a look at that bill so you know your rights, you know your protections, and because sometimes even though there's agencies that are supposed to enforce the law, a big challenge we have is agencies failing to do that, to implement or enforce. But that doesn't mean that we cannot take our own initiative as well and kind of light a match and get those agencies to do what they're supposed to do. And it's strongest when it comes from our constituents, our students, their parents.
Senator Press. Yeah.
So I wanted to share something kind of unique. I thought it was germane to this discussion, as Senator Castro had just mentioned, that we pay attention to the content of the bill and not necessarily the bill number. Every year, every legislature, we both houses introduce hundreds and hundreds of bills, and the fact of the matter is, a fraction of them will pass the House, will pass the Senate, and we'll get the approval from the Attorney General's office. That doesn't mean that the bill isn't good. It's just that is this the right time? Do you have the the requisite numbers to get it passed through the houses? But at the end of the day, at the final session of every legislature, we have what's called a sine die, where we file all the previous bills, and that just means that there's so many. Imagine if every legislature passed 300 bills, how would DPS, how would Attorney General's office, how would all these stakeholders know what the laws were if we changed 300 laws every 2 years? It would be untenable to keep track of. So we're mindful of putting forward to the top the highest priority, and not to say that the other ones aren't worth dealing with, but obviously the budget, for example, this year is protracted. Should have been done by September 1st. We're at November 12th. So that alone takes up so much time and effort. I also wanted to share with you guys the differences between the lower house and the upper house. In the upper house, we have 9 members. In the lower house, we have 20. And for fiscal affairs, as just one example, when Fiscal Affairs Committee holds a meeting, well, that's 7 members of the Senate. That means that no other committee can have committee meeting in the same time. As we're in the House, Ways and Means consists of 7, so another committee might not have the same membership and can still continue. So it's just a different way of operating, and it should be understood that it isn't from lack of want to move, it's just that the amount of members that we have restrict our ability to move as expeditiously as we'd like to.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that's a very good point, Senate President. Just like the Senate in the House side, the Ways and Means is the biggest committee, and usually it consists of the chairpersons of each of the committees. And so, of course, when Ways and Means holds a committee, they cannot have it at another committee can't be going on at the same time. But yeah, they can schedule it at a different time, but yeah, the Ways and Means does take a lot. Again, because it deals with appropriations, revenue generation, and like I said, even to move money around, that's part of our responsibility. So especially with the budget, it's an important bill to work on. So good questions. Yeah, and then when it comes to numbers, it's like, for example, if we introduce the bill, right? So we introduce a bill, they tag it as we're in the 24th legislature, so it'll be like, say, 24-10. Then it goes through committee, then they make the necessary changes. Then it's like either, 24-10, House Draft 1, or as accepted, or House HS1, and then if it goes to the Senate and they make some changes and it comes back, it's HS1, SD2, whichever, and then it goes to the governor. If they sign it into law, that's when it becomes a public law. So imagine having to remember hundreds of bills, then the tracking of that one bill, and so that's why we get the numbers mixed up, and it's the content that it's important. Before we continue on, in the gallery, I'd like to introduce our Chairman of Commerce, Representative Thomas John T.J. Manglonia from Precinct 5. We have EAGI Chair, Senator Frank Cruz from Tinian and Agigan. And the Education Chair, right, in the Senate, Senator Ronnie Calvo from Rhoda. All right, ma'am or sirs, any questions? Those are good questions, by the way. Don't be shy. Sir, go ahead.
This is a question for like the representatives of each committees. What kind of conflicts are like the communities going through in your like community?
Oh, okay. What kind of conflicts do the chairpersons face? Well, I wouldn't really call it conflict. When they call committee meetings, it's a meeting of that committee. Like for example, in the House, there could be 7 to 11 members too in each committee, and if there's any kind of conflict, it's probably just disagreements on the bill or what changes that needs to be made. Other than that, if a member is kind of like directly involved with something that's in the bill, like for example, I don't know, if you're like a parent, a PTSA officer at a school, and then there's a bill to amend something regarding the PTSA at the school level, of course you want to, abstain, conflict, because it's kind of conflicting whether you decide one way or another. But other than that, I don't really think there's any real conflict. I mean, there are times where, for example, a chairperson can feel strongly about a bill that needs to be passed, and if he or she cannot muster that number on the committee level, then it doesn't get to the main floor for decision. But that's part of the process of passing legislation. Yes, floor leader.
Yeah, and I'm just going to kind of chime in with what the speaker is saying. When I used to chair the JGO committee, that was a very difficult committee because that's the throw everything committee. If you can't figure out where it's going to go and who's going to talk about it, they just throw it in there, and then you read the legislation, you call your committee meetings. But it's up to a certain amount of members that a committee can have. I think for me, there was no conflicts, but it's getting people to kind of buy in with your debate, because there's just a lot of debate happening. I can say one thing and I can have, let's say, for example, Rep. Joel Camacho totally disagree. Like his sentiments are completely different. Our vice chair for Ways and Means, he's been around here long. So when we debate, we're getting like a full blown history class, and we're like, oh, I understand, I get it. But there's never really any conflicts. A lot of debates happen, and I think that's one thing I miss outside of being an officer, is to have these committees that you chair, just to listen and hear how people see a certain bill, and how they interpret that for discussion. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Floor Leader. And before we move forward, I'd like to, since you brought up the Vice Chair of Ways and Means, I'd like to recognize Representative Blas Jonathan BJ Atao. He is the Vice Chair of the Ways and Means Committee and the Chair of the SNIOT Ways and Means Committee. So if you guys need money, check him. Yeah. All right. I hope, Senator Castro. Yeah.
So I just wanted a point of clarification. The question was about conflicts or controversy or controversial. Like was that your main point? So since that was your main point about any controversial issues, I myself have a good number of controversial bills that I've introduced. But it all boils down to education, and learning about the issue. So first of all, during my time, like my brief time in the Senate, it's only been a few months, but I introduced maybe two of really controversial bills. I'll start with the Senate Legislative Initiative 24-03. See, even our Senate President knew which one I was talking about, because I was going to say 02, but in my mind it was 03. So we'll start with Senate Legislative Initiative 24-03, and that was to extend land leases, private land leases, to 99 years. Currently, the law, the CNMI is very unique because we have a provision in our covenant agreement and our constitution called Article 12 that is a land alienation clause, meaning you have to be indigenous to own land here. We're the only jurisdiction in the United States that has that clause, and it was put in just because of the years of exploitation, colonialism, from Spanish, German, Japanese. We were under the UN for a while. That provision was put in to protect the people of the Marianas from further exploitation. So it's a really controversial subject because you're trying to balance two. You're trying to balance protecting the indigenous population from exploitation. At the same time, you're trying to, at least our intent is to improve the economy, because right now our economy is really suffering, right? And one of the fastest ways to improve the economy is through foreign direct investment. And that's what the 99-year extension kind of tries to accomplish. We're not the only ones that have done this. The Republic of Palau did this several years, maybe almost probably more than 10 years ago. They have their own version of Article 12 but they extended the lease terms to 99 years so that they can get more foreign direct investment. I believe even the Republic of the Philippines, although that's not really a good example because it's a bigger population, but the Republic of the Philippines did the same thing, because in the Philippines they also have land alienation clauses. So the Senate Legislative Initiative 24-03 to extend land lease terms on private land, although there was recommendations to include public lands, and in Palau it's both private and public. If you look from all the way like right now our economy is mainly only based on tourism. But if you look at all the hotels we have from south to north, Coral Ocean Point, PIC, um, what is it, World Resort, right? So Coral Ocean Point changed owners like 3 times. PIC changed owners from, I believe it was Mr. Feeney, then it went to Ken Corp, now it's with Elan. So that's 3 different owners within a small time period. World Resort went from way back, Royal Taga Hotel, where it stays, to Diamond Hotel, to Hanwha, which Hanwha is like the Johnson & Johnson of companies in Korea. It's a multinational conglomerate. It's a big company. But even Hanwha sold it, and now it's a private equity company. Private equity, so, move forward again to Garapan. We went from Hyatt or Continental Hotel to Hyatt, and now it's with MB Capital, and then move forward to the north side. You have Nico Hotel, which went from Nico to Palms, which was under UMDA, and now it's with Elan. And then you have Marianas Resort, which we still haven't figured that out. It changed owners maybe twice, right? So what's the story here is that when you look at a lot of the big companies, they look at years. So it's very hard to get more investment into companies like that if the terms are really short. So like, let's say you, even for a bank, if you cannot get your return on investment, they're less likely to loan you some more money. It's the same thing for companies. If they cannot get their return, so right now you're seeing a lot of, depression throughout the islands, which is globally, an issue, but also, it's something that we need to really look deeper into the details and find out why are businesses leaving, what are the main causes, and also look at our surroundings. What are other people doing, other governments doing that have improved their economies? So it's not just about land, but it can also mean education. Another controversial one was to reduce the legislature, which, that's controversial because I'm in the legislature and I'm trying to reduce it, but, when we introduce something, we shouldn't shy away from controversy, because what it opens up is dialogue, and for you to dive deeper into the details. So, unfortunately, a lot in our community, we still need to work on that, understanding the process of how legislation works. So, when we introduce something, it doesn't become law right away. It goes through a vetting process, which means, like, let's say those controversial initiatives, I introduce it, it goes to the floor. The Senate President will assign it to a committee. The committee in the Senate does its due diligence and does the outreach and make sure that we're getting all the feedback we need from the stakeholders. And if it does move forward, after it passes the Senate, it goes to the House and it repeats that process. So, our system of government, it's mirrored after the United States with the 2 houses. So you really have a lot of time to make sure that, it's vetted before. It's not like a dictatorship where, boom, we make it law tomorrow. So, just the message is don't shy away from controversy, because sometimes you have to get to the root problems, and it may be sensitive, but you have to address those problems and accept it and understand it in order to solve it. So, thank you.
And also, just adding on to Senator Manny regarding his initiatives, that will go back to the people to decide. Okay, that's what an initiative is. So it's an initiative can start from the public, which is called a popular initiative, and then there's the legislative initiative where it passes the legislature, and then the AG kind of certifies it. Then it goes to the ballot for all of you to decide whether you want 99 years or whether you want a smaller legislature. Chairman Joel, you had your hands up after. Okay.
And I think that's a good discussion point because remember, we voted no to casino twice, right? And then somehow we had casino. So I think someone should ask that question. How is it that the people go through a process, they vote, they said no 2 times, but yet we still have a casino? So for those who were here historically, how does that work, Speaker? Because the people voted twice for casino, and then all of a sudden, there's casino. How did that happen?
I don't know because I voted against it, but
No, I'm just.
but I think it allows also just like the popular initiative, right? As ratified, like for example in Tinian and Rhoda, there's language, and maybe Rep. Ato can clarify this for me, where changes can be made through legislation. Now, in terms of how we implemented it, I think there's some language somewhere that allows for, yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, thank you guys. Sorry for being late this morning. Thank you for making the time to be up here. But just to the floor leader's question, the casino is not legal or illegal within the Constitution, so it can be addressed by law. So the first Casino Act that actually happened in the city was back in 1978. They passed legislation, it was signed into law, and then there was a public referendum that actually killed that law back in 1980. So there's a group of people that started a popular referendum that killed that law. So the casino legislation, unlike the initiatives that Senator Castro is talking about, it can be provided by law. It's made its process through both houses, and it's signed into law. It legalizes casino for the respective islands of or municipalities of Rhoda, Tinian, and Aguigan. They did a popular referendum to legalize casino in their respective municipalities. So that in itself can be done. It can be done through legislative process or popular referendum, because it doesn't necessarily touch the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that talks about gambling. And then, unlike the initiatives that Senator Manny had introduced, it's an initiative amending the Constitution would allow the process for both houses to pass, gets to the AG's office, and the AG's office gets it out to the people for public education and for vote out on the ballot. So I think there's other types of initiatives like borrowing money, for example. We have to change the Constitution. Right now, we're capped at $300 million, but we're only obligated for a pension obligation bond. But now, if we want to go to a general obligation bond, we would have to amend the Constitution. So there's things that the Constitution kind of lays out in skeleton, but then everything else is created by law to add the meat and the veins and the fat to the Constitution. So the casino is one that's actually more flexible, can be done by legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Ato. Rep. Manny, you wanted to add to your...
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, whenever you hear, what's going on in the legislature, just remember there's 2 process, a public law. Actually, there's 3. There's a local law, a Commonwealth law process, local bill, Commonwealth bill, and then there's also the legislative initiatives, right? So what's the difference? Local laws only affect the district. So for example, Saipan and Northern Islands Senatorial District, 3rd Senatorial District, Rhoda, and it's its own senatorial district, Tinian. So the local laws only apply to those. Commonwealth like bills, they would be Commonwealth wide, right? And then that's the bills go through both houses or delegation, and then when everyone here in the chamber votes, it then goes to the governor. If the governor approves it, it becomes law. with the legislative initiative, it's the same process, except you skip the governor and it goes to the people, right? So if Senate legislative initiative or House legislative initiative, it has to be agreed upon by both houses, and if passes with like both houses agree, then it goes. It basically goes on the ballot. Yeah. Okay, so whenever you hear legislative initiative, that means that the legislature is asking the public the voters to decide on this decision, right? Okay,
Thank you. And we'll open it up for questions. Any other questions? Rep. TJ, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. Come on, don't shy away from controversy. Okay, okay. After Senator Cruz, go ahead, and then Senator Cruz, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Dale, that's on. No? Is that me, Izzy? There you go.
I'm just gonna in line with the Chair Flores in regards to why the people of Saipan. I know that I think it went 3 times, right? And they didn't approve the casino, so it passed here in here at the legislature. So the question you raised, that how is that? So if there's a legislation that was passed here that the public or anyone that still not contented to that, there's 3 branches of government here, right? The legislature passes law, the executive interprets the law, administer the law, and the judicial interprets the law. So if we're not contented with what we did here, anyone can just certify question whether that legislation is constitutional or unconstitutional. Now, in regards to the casino, it can go through the public, like initiative. We ask, the people, the general public of each senatorial that decided to have casino will have the opportunity to participate in that regards. So I understand. I didn't support casino. I highly respect the people of Saipan, what they want for Saipan, what is good for Saipan. And I asked the same thing to the other senatorial district, that whatever the people of that island wishes to have, we have to respect one another, right? So I didn't support it, but it allows by law, like what Rep. Atto mentioned. It can be passed through popular initiative, which is the general public, or through the legislature. So, like I said earlier, if anyone still not contented with how we're doing or how we pass legislation here, you can bring it to before the court for certified question whether or not that's a good bill or it is not. So the court is the only branch of government that can interpret the law. So once the court decides, and also through court, there's steps, right? That if you're not satisfied as well, or the rest of or the other group, they're not satisfied with the lower court, they can go to, they can challenge that, right? And it goes up to the highest court to decide whether or not that legislation is constitutional or unconstitutional. And we always rely on our legal counsel. We always rely on legal counsel, what we do here. We don't just introduce legislation that is not reviewed by our legal counsel. So like I said, if the public is not satisfied, they can always go through to that process, to be sure whether or not it's constitutional or unconstitutional. Because not every single legislation that we pass is a perfect law. Sometimes there's an oversight on the law. That's why we have the judicial to interpret that. And we also have a process that if the executive is not satisfied, can always veto and we also have a process that we can challenge that and override that veto. Or if we don't want to create bad relationship with the executive branch, we can just go through a friendly approach, which is certify questions to the court, so we can see who which one is right and which one is wrong. So that's the process here. Like I said, we don't just pass legislation that is not good for the public. And also, not every single bill or legislation is a perfect bill. If the bill is not right, either we repeal that bill or we amend that bill to make it better. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Rep. Magnolia?
Good morning, everyone. Rep. TJ Magnolia, representing Precinct 5, also an alumni of NMC, so it's great to see students up here, and I hope all of you are thinking about becoming future leaders. I am currently the youngest serving member in the legislature, not the youngest in history, but currently serving. And I chose to do this because I wanted to try and make a difference in my community. I'm pretty sure all of you feel passionate about the things that are going on in our community, and it's no secret that sometimes we can repeat certain cycles, right? But the only way that we can change that is if you stand up and you take initiative to come and make that difference, right? So I decided as a member of my generation to be the one to step up and be the voice. And I wanted to put things in perspective here in a way that maybe would be very easy for you to understand. So to pass a piece of legislation is extremely hard, right? We're talking about all these different processes and committees, and even just to get it introduced, right? Sometimes it can be a controversial thing. But it's just like any situation, right? You guys have groups, you guys do group projects, you guys work together in classes, right? Everybody has different opinions. Our hearts might be in the right place, right? Our hearts want to pass the class, right? We want to do what's best, but sometimes our opinions can get in the way. And here in the House, there's 19 different opinions that you kind of have to convince, to pass certain pieces of legislation, right? And everybody has their different personalities. We're all from different generations, and we're all just trying to figure this out together, but it takes time. Like, I've only been able to pass one bill since I've been in office. That's how difficult it is to pass a bill from the House. You try to get the buy-in from the Senate, and then obviously it goes to the governor to be signed into law. So it's a whole process that people don't really understand until they're actually in these shoes. And we're dealing with so many different factors, right? We're dealing with financial issues, social issues. One example was we had people that felt very passionate about the issue going on in Palestine, right? And we're balancing our views with the federal government, right? The federal government is taking the side of Israel. But we have members of our community that's very passionate about what's going on in Palestine. So how do we find the balance sometimes with what we feel emotionally and also what's going on in the federal government? You're seeing the effects of what happens in DC here with the food stamp situation. Imagine that. It's thousands of miles away, but it still affects us here. And those are the things that we have to juggle on a daily basis. And I try as best as I can to go out there in the community and try to help explain to people, because sometimes the media can be portrayed in a certain way, and the media has to do their job. They gotta sell, right? But at the same time, there's always two sides to the story. So I try to be an advocate here to say, hey, we at the legislature, we're trying our best. We may not be perfect, right? It may not be roses and sunshine. It might not be a one shot and go to make everything happen, and we can't just make things happen overnight. But when it comes down to the most important things, right, to our schools, to our retirees, things like that, to try and get food on the table for our people, for the most part, we all put our personal differences aside and we do what's best for our community. And I encourage, again, any of you that are thinking about leading to come up and try. I think you only have to be, 21 to run for office? You don't need a college degree. You don't need none of that. You just have to be staying here for 7 years or 5 years? 3 years? Yeah. So it's not much to run for office, right? Some people think you need all these credentials, but if your heart's in the right place and you want to serve, and I also want to take this time to invite you all, if you guys have any issues that you're dealing with, to visit us. Our doors are always open at any time. and we will take the time to hear you. And we may not have all the right answers or the solutions, but we can at least try. And that's how I wanted to put this in perspective for you guys to understand that it's not an easy job. We make decisions that affect many, many lives. A simple yes or no can change the trajectory of our history. And those are the things that weigh heavy on our hearts. Even me, sometimes I lose sleep thinking about a decision that I'm going to make that's going to affect all of our people. But we chose to be here. We chose we chose service over self, and we chose to put the public in our forefront. And I'm not complaining about it, but I just want people to understand that it's not a necessarily easy process. And things like Senator Mann is doing, he has a lot of guts, because people are very passionate about our land leases. People are very passionate about the size of the legislature and how things are working. And a lot of us are new. I'm on my second term, and I'm still trying to understand how everything works here and the history of how we got here. But we're all, I can definitely say that we're all trying our best. Our hearts are all in the right place, and we want to help our people. But just like you are in a class or a group, there's different personalities. There's different ways to skin the cat. There's different ways to get to the end goal. And we all just try to find a way that works for everyone. So I just wanted to put that in perspective for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Manglonia. Senate President.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative Manglonia. That was very well put. I also wanted to bring it into the whole context of the CNMI government. So we obviously have the Senate, the House. We also have the governor, the AG's office, the judiciary. We also have a delegate who represents the CNMI, obviously in Washington, D.C. A lot of the efforts that have been undertaken, a lot of the assistance that has not been removed from the CNMI comes directly from the efforts made from that office. It's a very it's like juggling. There's so many balls in the air, and every ball is important to one person, at least one person in the room. So the more balls are in the air, you're wondering if it's your ball that's going to drop. God forbid the juggler messes up. So all the things that we do here in the House and the Senate and with the governor has to be in line with what is being asked for on the federal side, because it's important that we have one voice. Everybody needs to be saying the same thing so that there's no misunderstandings, no illusions as to what the CNMI needs. The federal government is obviously dealing with the 50 states and then the territories, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. Hawaii is now a state. Then you have we have Guam. So there's just a myriad of people and voices that are fighting over the same resources. It's very similar to here. We'd love to give DPS, right? It was just in the paper recently. DPS is short of manpower. They're experiencing an increase in crime. We on Tinian only have 8 police officers on duty. Now imagine we have a transient population of no less than 200 people. By that I mean 200 people who come and go from Tinian in the day from 8 to 5. So before, when we were in a small community, right, I can say if something happened in our neighborhood, and she's my neighbor, and something was stolen, I can say, oh, I saw the car, that belongs to so and so, and we can help police ourselves. Now, because of the influx in the transient population, in the fact that we don't even know when you walk into Tinian Airport or the what is that? Terminal. It was always a thing where you could recognize everybody's face. You'd say hello to everybody who was there. It was so small. We had 2,000 people. Now you add another 1,000 people for one construction company. You add another 500 from another construction company. And then you add DOD components, right? So when you walk into the actual airport, you might not recognize anybody you see. You might go out to get your car and not recognize anybody there. And that in and of itself hinders our ability to do exactly that, help police ourselves. So there are so many things that are important to everybody, but because of the resources that are lacking, we need to make sure that our asks from the bottom up are aligned so that we maximize the opportunity. So when the delegate gets to sit down with, so just recently, the Senate chairman for military arm appropriations came through to Tinian and Saipan. That's called a condel. And so that delegation of senators came to the CNMI to put their feet on the ground and to realize and understand how much money they were investing in the CNMI, what was it for, and how is it progressing, and if they're willing to fund it further. So this is a component that is very easy for us to forget because the delegate is also all the way in DC. Like TJ said, decisions are made 30,000, however many thousand miles away, but we must never lose sight that we are all interlocked, and we should be in lockstep, at least with the messaging and with what we want to do, so that we can maximize our opportunities. Because when, just like any one of us, we have some members that are about to leave because they have meetings. We have a meeting today at 1:30. Our schedules are so packed, so it's very difficult for us to entertain like an invitation today for tomorrow, because tomorrow is already booked. So imagine that over there in DC with all the House members. I believe there are 436 members of the House in the U.S. and then 100 senators. The vice president breaks the vote, two senators for each state. So if this is what we're going through here with our 20 members of the House, 9 members of the Senate, then you could imagine how crazy the schedules are in America, where you now have 400 some, congressional representatives, and all of the constituents and districts that they represent. And you have to make sure that your voice is loud enough and the request is loud enough that it can reach the threshold that they will entertain it on a federal level. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Senate President. Questions? Riley. Go ahead. You're live and people are watching, so.
Oh, there. Okay, okay. Sorry. So this for my first time actually speaking this chamber, so start from the top. Okay. So once again, like I said, I did research last night. So the CNMI Public Law 24-01, which was the fiscal year 2025 Appropriations Act, like I said, hasn't been changed or altered since it was only meant for this fiscal year, right? And to make government employees affected by austerity return to 100% work hours to continue to serve the CNMI and our people. However, right now, there's a push to create a new appropriations law for this fiscal year 2026, but it's being reduced downwards because of lower revenue projections, which will affect many of our departments here, such as DLNR, DPW, DPS, DCCA, and even NMC, which President Galvin sent email a few days ago regarding the warnings of budget shortfall affecting our college. So the new budget is also posing some serious challenges for the public school system, PSS, which you guys propose an allocation of around $31.7 million, is that correct? But they're requesting $37 million, which is below their expectations. And as mentioned, you guys, this could lead to the austerity Mondays, meaning they might have to cut back on instructional days from 5 to 4 each week, reducing school days from 180 to 150. And meanwhile, our tourism sector is also affected with fewer flights and visitors arriving, which is impacting the revenue the government relies on to support our public services here. And while Public Law 24-01 is still in effect for fiscal year 2025, the financial pressures for fiscal year 2026 are pushing new budget decisions that will directly impact, especially, education and tourism. So before I ask you guys a question, I hope that you all legislatures, House and Senate, in the Ways and Means Committee will continue to work hard in figuring out how to, allocate the limited budget and Marana's public land trust loans included to our important departments/government agencies, even when it won't meet the expectations overall that they are asking for a proposed budget for them to continue afterwards and cutting costs that will affect employee hours. It's understandable the times have been tough. The two pandemics, Typhoon U2 and Solar, from the past that damaged the community, and the COVID-19 pandemic that severely affected the economy when we got into a lockdown. When there's no flights and tourists coming here at that time, that caused many businesses to shut down. And even now, in where we are, the post-pandemic era, as mentioned, tourism numbers have dropped significantly, and flight shortages recently, which is T-Way, for example, they suspended its operations here, and Jeju, they cut its night flights, so they're only flying here in the afternoon, right, if I'm correct? And that's for example. And from the Sinamay PSS perspective, the proposed budget for the PSS deserves support, as education is the cornerstone of the Sinamay's future, while teachers and staff continue to work hard in providing students the resources and knowledge for their benefit. So overall, as a normal human person here, and not trying to be smart, and that my dad and you all, besides the criticisms, just don't argue behind doors, and instead, continue to work together, no matter majority or minority or different parties or different solutions or ideas in mind, to help the cinema to continue to function, And even if I'm not into or just don't understand politics, the ways and means and all this other stuff. Now, asking my question, how would you guys address the recent flight shortages, Jeju, like I mentioned, Jeju cutting its night flights and T-Way suspending its operations temporarily. And what initiatives can the legislatures implement right away to increase flights to Sinamay, aside from reduction of landing fees implemented by CPA? So yeah, thank you.
That's pretty loaded. You forgot to add also executive orders that actually halted potential flights coming in. I think that was the EVS TAP issue, which they stopped in April. Not just stopped approving, they just stopped taking action. And then 3.5 months later, they just started. So I think there was the charter flights and all that, they were picking momentum. Momentum was picking up. And then that also, just to add to your list of challenges that also brought down our travel coming in. Senate President, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a very good statement. Thank you for that. I think what parts were missing were, I believe, duty free, and then the fact that they were the only service there, major service at the airport, and they had obviously their departure was a huge hit to CPA. Not only the landings or the reduction in arrivals, which was added on to what is going on with CPA. That's the most difficult part, in my opinion, of sitting in this seat, right? Everybody has a reasonable, articulable, argument for why they should be funded to the levels they should be funded. The problem lies in the pool of money that you have to deliver those services. One of the things I don't believe you mentioned was GHLI. The governor's proposal back in July 1st, it dollar funded it, and that's group health life insurance. So that means that they deduct that amount from my check, and then that pays for my share of medical insurance. but the government side is not being funded. So what happens when you go to the hospital? Are you going to pay for it? It's like not having the insurance. So amongst all of these things, Medicaid match, for example, we have a threshold that we have to meet, or else we're just not going to be able to get the same kind of treatment. Medical referral. So on top of PSS, NMC, DPS, DLNR, right? Which under DLNR, there's so many sub branches. You have DCCA, that has another sub branches. You have HPO, you have all of these other things, and then you spread them across 3 senatorial districts that have different requirements. That all of these things are why it takes us so long to deliberate and find out how do we adequately distribute the money so that everybody has a fighting chance to make it through the year. One of the things that we don't have control over is the initial after the late governor was was elected. America had a stance where China was no longer a part of our economy, was no longer going to be a part of our economy. So at that point in time, you have to understand that China consisted of close to 40% of our inbound passengers. So as soon as you wipe out 40% overnight, right, that has a domino effect on the whole economy. And that can't be understated. It left CPA scrambling. It left the hotel scrambling. Everybody else, because if the people aren't, if there's nobody cleaning the rooms, if there's nobody cooking, if there's nobody maintaining, if there's no receptionist, then all of those jobs from one hotel, you calculate them with 400 plus people, and then another hotel decides to close down because they're running at a deficit. So to stay open, that business has $1 million. They're paying $1 million to stay open to serve no one. That kind of business model can only last for so long, right? Until you decide, hey, I have to cut the cord on this because I need whatever other businesses I have, I need them to stay solvent and open so that in the event we rebound, I still have enough money to get back into the game. So when 400 people lose their jobs from one hotel, that means they're not buying gas. They might, this is when there was food stamps, but you can't pay CUC with food stamps. You can't pay IT&E with food stamps or Docomo, right? You're only limited to that. And even that, depending on your home situation, you have a limited amount. So if you were able to, you were making $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 a month at a hotel as a manager, and now you have, you're getting maybe $400, $500 in food stamps, that has a huge effect on us receiving taxes and getting revenues to properly distribute into the very things that you itemized in your opening statement. So it is not unenviable. Like, we do it because obviously we want to serve, but it's also a part of the job that we understand it's easy to point and say, you guys didn't, you men and women didn't do this. Your leaders didn't do this. We're trying our very best. But when you're sitting there and there's a room of us, say there's 25 of us here, and we have 4 crackers for the next week, who's gonna get how many pieces of the cracker? Everybody deserves, right, an equitable share. But who gets what? Because we all need all of us to survive, because all of us are important. So I understand, like, I really, really feel for the Commonwealth and our situation. But to kind of piggyback off of what I said earlier, this is why we work in concert with our delegate, because there are efforts being made currently to secure funding not only for this year, but for future years to come. Why? Because we understand, as a whole of a government, that this is not something that can change overnight. We're not going to wake up in December and all of the airlines are coming back in. All of the hotels are going to open up back. All the restaurants that have closed are going to open up. This is going to be it took us a while to get here, and it's going to take us a while to get out. So that's why we work so that we make the proper requests so that we can get funding, however much it is, and then we know where that funding is going to. One of the things that we have come to understand is we're look at CUC. The CUC is currently up to date with the government's payroll, but for a long time we hadn't paid our share of the money. They have a deficit right now with the hospital. So we've passed legislation that has allowed them to make a deal on how they're going to pay back their arrears, and they've come to an agreement, thank God, to pay back a sufficient amount. But they're working below recovery, cost recovery. So the lone power generating entity in the Commonwealth is operating below recovery rate. What that tells you is at any point in time, right, if things go south anymore, then we're going to have rolling blackouts more so on Saipan. So there's so many things, like the paper and everything that you've articulated, you're spot on. But for every one of those things, there's so many levels to each one of them that it's almost like it would take, respectfully, like at least an hour to dive into each one and say, these are the reasons why we've taken this approach. And then we move on to the next one. This is why, because maybe there's money that has already been allocated or obligated from the federal side that we now are knowing, but we have to wait for it to clear because of the shutdown, right? So before we give them the money, we need the money in hand first. But before we get the money in hand, we need the federal government to stop the shutdown. And the shutdown is everything. It's not only NAP, it's WIC. I mean, I know DPS gets grant funding, OGM gets grant funding, the hospital gets grant funding, NMC gets grant funding, PSS gets grant funding. So like it's a whole of civilization effect. It isn't like limited to just one issue. When we say national government shutdown, that is a word that I think we should really look to understand the full ramifications of how much aid we really get and how that affects our day-to-day operations. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Senate President. Are we good with time? Oh, we're going to wrap it up? Okay, all right. Manny, Senator Manny, I'll give you the last.
So that was a really good question. This is a SO297 class, right? Okay, that's good. How many of you guys are business majors? Okay. How many of you guys are criminal justice majors? NRM? Education? Is there any other major I didn't mention? Liberal arts? Social work. Oh, that's also under liberal arts, right? Okay. If there's one thing, and I really liked that question earlier, Riley, I think the biggest issue is we need to dive deeper into the details. If we're only thinking diesel, like CUC, if we're only thinking diesel, we're going to always talk about diesel. In terms of economy, if we're only thinking tourism, we're always going to be stuck on tourism and putting money into tourism. But for you business majors, you have to look at what's the situation at hand. If there's one thing I learned working at NMC, because I'm also a business major, MBA, but working at NMC, there's one thing that we always did, and we always said, data-driven decision-making for continuous quality improvement. So look at the data. Right now, what we're experiencing is it's been like this since before you guys were born. Maybe some of you, since late 90s, early 2000s. If you read about the challenges in the economy, it's still the same story. And that's the unfortunate effect of being reliant on one industry, and that's tourism. I know the administration, especially with late Governor Palacios, we're trying to diversify. And I hope that our current administration is still looking into diversifying our economy. Because an economy is based on imports and exports. And right now, there's no history majors, but I wish, but there's a reason why history is required to get your degree, is because if you study history, you'll understand some of the economics of issues, right? Every country that was poor and came out of poverty, one, they funded education, and two, they funded industry, right? So we import so much of our stuff, like even pork, everything. And I think what we should be doing is really looking at that data and figuring out how best to solve this economic issue given our limited natural resources. And our colleagues in the House and Senate, they've introduced several bills to help mitigate that. But at the end of the day, like, for example, another controversial thing is the 25% that we're funding education, but we also have to make sure that education is relevant to the workforce needs of the economy. So meaning, if, let's say, a semiconductor company is going to come in, they're going to need people that understand programming, engineering. Does our curriculum align with that? Just to make it quick, at one point in time, we also have to look at, before we generated a lot of money locally, meaning the money that we collected based on industry here in the CNMI was bigger than the money we were getting from the federal government. Now it's reverse. We get more from the federal government, which has a lot of strings attached, and we generate less locally. So we need to continue to focus on what we can control and start developing industry on island as much as we can. That's the best way to solve our issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator and Senate President. And before we wrap it up,
in that same vein, I'm going to say two quick things about diversification of our economy. One thing that is true everywhere: diversification of an economy does take time, right? You need to build capacity. You need to understand what you need to do it for a prolonged, protracted period of time, and understand how it will stay solvent for however long you need it. And you need to identify whatever fields that are coming. What are the avant-garde, right? What do you need in the future, not now, or what is now that you think you'll need in perpetuity? One of the two things we did pass a stable coin in May that was eventually taken to court. It's currently under a certified question, which is a judicial process where two parties go to the courts and ask the Supreme Court for a final judgment, whether what the Tinian delegation did when they created a stablecoin to use as a digital medium to do online transactions was legal. Now, ironically and unfortunately to the CNMI, as soon as we passed our stablecoin initiative, Bank of America created their own stablecoin, PayPal created their own stablecoin, Apple Pay created their own. So all of this happened after Tinian, the CNMI, created its very own stablecoin. So in an industry that is so quick, like, to be ahead of it is so difficult because tech is so fast, right? Once you're late, you're almost out. And we were there. We were at the cusp. And the amount of money that we were talking about transaction, who knows here blockchain? Anybody? Okay, so I won't touch that. But to that point also, one of the things that if you're not interested in, perfect, that's fine. But one of the things that as I've spoken to our DoD counterparts, and as they look to what resources we have here in the CNMI, the one biggest component that we lack is people who deal with cybersecurity. Now, and that's huge. Anybody who has a phone, your data is open. Once you connect to McDonald's, if you sit down, anybody in McDonald's can go through your whole phone, get your passwords, get your bank account information. I mean, this is not new. I'm sure you guys have TikTok and you've seen people where if you open yourself to a public network, that public network is open to you. So I just wanted to share that. So if anybody knows any of your friends that are interested in those fields, I deeply urge you guys to go ahead. I mean, you can get degrees or you can get certifications. There are multiple certifications out there that doesn't college. You have to get your your GEs, right, and then you go towards your actual your degree. With certifications, you go directly to what you need to know to be certified to be able to provide the service in the way of cybersecurity. But thank you all for your time. I appreciate all of the research and all of the questions. I hope this was informative for you guys. I hope that it helped shine the light on some of what we do here on different levels, and that this is not the last time we see you. Please feel free to come to any of the House sessions or Senate sessions and be a part of our process.
Yeah, and on behalf of my students, we thank you very much for sharing your valuable time to inform us about what's happening here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.